without clear objectives do not remain small. They get bigger, bloodier, longer, and more expensive. This is not a necessary war, it's a war of choice.
Donald Trump launches an unauthorized war in the Middle East. He characterizes it as endless and then wants to use his unauthorized war as an excuse to continue spending taxpayer dollars to brutalize or kill American citizens by continuing to unleash ICE. The whole thing is insane. Make it make sense, because it does not.
Democrats slamming President Trump's strikes on Iran as the House and Senate receive a classified briefing on the mission yesterday. New Fox News polls shed light on how Americans feel about Operation Epic Fury. 61% said that they feel Iran poses a real national security threat to the United States. Meanwhile, 6 House Democrats are introducing an alternative war powers resolution, which would require President Trump to halt military operations against Iran within 30 days unless Congress authorizes as much. The Senate set to vote on their own war powers resolution today, which would restrict the president's military authority without congressional approval. Joining me now is Georgia Congressman Richard McCormick, a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, thank you so much for being here this morning. And the House will vote on this resolution supported by Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie tomorrow. How will you vote?
Obviously, I'm going to vote against anything that Ro Khanna is bringing to the table. The funny thing is, this doesn't need to be a political football. This should be something that's very common sense. The Democrats, in large part, are responsible for what's happened in the last couple decades. When you think about Obama giving billions of dollars to the Iranian regime and basically Biden lifting sanctions, that provided billions upon billions of dollars that were invested in terrorism. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, that was all money basically provided because we allowed that or we supplemented it. So this is really an animal that was created by the Democrats to begin with, and now we have to deal with it as usual with a country that's producing about 100 drones for every 7 anti-drone missiles that we can produce, and a country who's on the verge of creating nuclear weapons and destabilizing the entire world.
Well, I mean, it's a good point that you make, and it's hard to understand whether this is politics from your colleagues on the left or if it's actually real. You look back to Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, and when they faced similar situations, and they, they didn't need to get to have the president then, a Democrat president, Obama, Biden, get congressional approval. Hillary was very clear when it came to Iran. Watch this.
If Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them.
Madam Leader, you're saying that the president did not need authorization initially and still does not need any authorization from Congress on Libya?
Yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you all very much.
Nancy Pelosi after Hillary Clinton proving the point there. So what is it? Is this politics from the left? Are they trying to create barriers going into the midterm elections? Is this all political?
It's always political with the Democrats. They're not looking for a solution. They're looking for an issue. If you think about their issue, Obama and Clinton basically and how they looked at the border. Yeah. They're very much in line with what we believe. And now, of course, that's flipped because they're always looking for an angle. They are smart, but they're deceivers. And this is a dishonest conversation, really.
That's unbelievable. It's really a shame in such a dangerous moment in time that we have to be talking about whether or not this is political, Mitch Rochelle.
Well, the thing is, we have an adversary who says death to America at the end of their speeches, right. Death to Israel at the end of their speeches. We say God bless America. They say death to America, okay? Yeah. So I don't understand why this is something that the Democrats can't understand. When you have an enemy that ends their speeches with death to America, they are a threat to our existence and our way of life. Yeah. It's pretty simple.
And I think that's what the polls show.
Yeah.
Most people agree with that sentiment. Meanwhile, let's talk the other business at hand, Congressman, because President President Trump is threatening a full U.S. trade embargo on Spain after it refused to allow the U.S. to use its military bases on its soil for more Iranian strikes. The U.S. relocating 16 aircraft from bases in southern Spain, including refueling tankers. The president also criticized Spain for not meeting the president's calls for NATO members to spend 5% of GDP on defense. Now, I want to get your take on where this goes, particularly with the conversations underway about defense spending this week and in the coming weeks. The president is calling for a $1.5 trillion military budget in 2027. What are you hearing from colleagues with regard to that and the stockpile of the U.S., given so many assets are now in the region?
Well, if you look at what we haven't spent on the military, and we've allowed our military to be dilapidated. Last night was with the Heritage Foundation actually talking about the disrepair of the Navy, the underperformance of weapon production, the contracting issues, the investment in things that are obsolete and no longer applicable. We have a lot to improve, and quite frankly, as a percentage of GDP, for a long time, we've been at a low point of percentage of GDP invested in the military since World War II. I'm talking about for decades upon decades upon decades, we have not grown accordingly. And with this day and age of technology where we're kind of reinventing ourselves and how we apply the military and our competition with a peer rival of China, this is no time to get squeamish about how you invest in the future, because this is survival.
Well, so it sounds like you would support a $1.5 trillion military budget.
Absolutely. But we do need to be very careful that we don't mismanage that money. I think we have a lot of investments in things that are protectionist to different legislators' districts. We can't do that anymore. Those days are far gone. We need to be very responsible and good stewards of the people's money, and then they'll trust the investment, because this is an expensive time with the new technologies we have.
Of course. So you need to know specifically where the money will be allocated. I'm wondering if you would use that as some kind of a compromise to get Democrats to open DHS. I mean, top House Democrats are urging members to vote against this Republican-led funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security. That's expected on the floor this week. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem returning to Capitol Hill today, testifying in front of House lawmakers after being grilled by the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. Noem emphasized her department's work in deterring potential domestic Iranian sleeper cells as this conflict rages on. Congressman, what are your thoughts on a potential opening for DHS? When's that going to happen? Well, I mean, Congress is going on recess Thursday, right, tomorrow. So that means that DHS can't open before the week of, what, March 16th?
Well, I know we can change the schedule at a moment's notice. I know the speaker's all over this. But I think we're playing a game of political football or chicken, if you will, on this issues. I think they have a populist item. We think we have a populist item. This is going to make the nation much unsafer, and I think that's the thing we're going to key off of, where they want to claim that basically what we're doing is against American citizens by deporting illegal aliens. The truth will come out, and I think we have to be very steadfast in the way we message this and how we apply our laws. But I think this is about survival. Like I said, Iran is a bad actor. We've been at war with them for almost 50 years, right. and they've attacked us over 40 times through proxies, and we've lost hundreds of lives. This war has been going on whether we like it or not, and this was the time to act.
Congressman, we'll be watching your work. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Richard McCormick. We'll be right back.